Now, U.S. President Joe Biden has spoken with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Middle East leaders urging a de-escalation of the latest round of violence between Israel and Hamas. We're joined now by Bloomberg's international executive editor, Rosalind Mathieson. Ross, are there any signs at all that this is going to start to calm down relatively soon?
Well, no, unfortunately, exactly the opposite. You had another night of real violence in terms of rocket strikes on both sides. Israel reported in excess of 1,500 of them, including a barrage in response to their assassination of a group of Hamas military commanders. So you've got tit-for-tat airstrikes and rocket attacks going, and more worryingly, what you've got is real violence on the ground in Israel. You've got clashes in mixed Arab-Jewish neighbourhoods. In Jerusalem, you've got protests, you've got some looting, you've got burning of synagogues and so on. And so what you've got is people living in close proximity, fighting with each other, and the Israeli defense officials accusing militants of using Gaza civilians as human shields. So it's gotten very nasty very quickly, and no signs of any of that de-escalating. Even if you get a ceasefire and the rocket attacks, for example, it's very hard to diffuse the situation on the ground in places like Jerusalem.
Why is it so important for the U.S. to have this diffuse? What's their strategy going forward?
Well, the interesting thing, of course, is that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was one of the final leaders that Joe Biden called after he took office, and Joe Biden has seemingly had other priorities, particularly getting the Iranian nuclear accord back off the ground, and that's something that Israel is very opposed to, and downsizing the war in Yemen and so on. But now he's being drawn into this in many ways, and of course it is really important for the U.S. to get this contained and quickly, not just for the sake of the people who are being affected by this violence immediately, but also to avoid a spillover into other issues in the Middle East. Because what we've seen, of course, is a real thawing of ties between Israel and Gulf Arab states. And there's an incentive to have that continue for the region, for its prosperity, and so on. And if there's a full-blown war and a protracted one, all that process of engagement gets slowed down. It could muddy the waters in trying to get the Iran nuclear deal redone. It could even affect things in Yemen.